Well, hello everyone, welcome back guys, hope you all are doing well, and today we are going to solve lab number 6 from XXE vulnerability. This is again the server side vulnerability, and I am solving these labs from Web Security Academy introduced by Portswigger. Before going to solve the lab, this disclaimer as always for you, this video and its contents are only for educational and awareness purpose, and I do not support any unethical or illegal act. That's been said, let's jump to the lab. So today we are going to see exploiting blind XXE to retrieve data via error messages. So I'm going to get back for a moment. So in the beginning we see what is blind XXE and what should be your approach to find out blind XXE or to exploit blind XXE vulnerability. So there are two approaches. The one is by triggering out of band network interaction. If the web application is interacting outside or external domain or external network, that means by exploiting that vulnerability you can exfiltrate the sensitive data. The second approach is by triggering XML parsing errors in such a way that the error message contains sensitive data. So first of all, we have to make the application to give error and some specific kind of error, and once we get that error, that means with that approach, or you can say with this approach, you can extract the sensitive data from the system. So you can read the system files, which is very, very dangerous. So we already see the approaches for this, the first one, and now we are going to see the second approach by parsing error. So there we go. So now you can see an alternative approach to exploiting blind XXE is to trigger an XML parsing error where the error message contains the sensitive data that you wish to retrieve. So this will be effective if the application returns the resulting error message within its response. So this is very, very important. The application must return the error message. So you can trigger an XML parsing error message containing the contents of the etc passwd file using a malicious external DTD. So once I read using a malicious external DTD, so I think you get the idea. So in this lab, we will have one exploit server, which you can consider your controlled server or attacker controlled server, and that server will serve the malicious DTD, means this DTD, and in the request we will call this exploit server. Fine. So let's go, and this is the lab. You can see the agenda is this lab has a check stock feature that parses XML input but does not display the result. Okay, to solve the lab, use an external DTD to trigger an error message that displays the content of the etc passwd file. So you can see XML input, it parses the XML input but does not display the result. So normally it does not display the result, but we have to enforce the application to somehow parse the error, XML error. And the lab contains a link to an exploit server on a different domain where you can host your malicious DTD. Fine. So to save the time, I am going to copy this malicious DTD and I'm going to paste it with me. So this malicious DTD is served by the attacker controlled server, and then in the request we will call the exploit server, and we will call the exploit server like this. So it's gonna be doc type, and then let's say test, and inside you have the entity, and that should be parameter entity. So let's say XXE and then system, and this system is going to call http:// it's gonna be exploit server. Fine. And then we need to call, actually I can put it like this so you do not get confused. Fine. And now here I'm going to call it XXE semicolon. That's it. Fine. So let's go and we will do that. So I already open up the lab here. let's go and select any product, but before that just turn on the burp proxy and view details. I'm gonna arrange a bit, so put that window here and put the burp window here. So now you can see we got this request. Now if you go bottom to this page, you will find the check stock functionality, and here you can see there are three location or three stocks: London, Paris and Milan. So let's choose anyone and just check stock, and you will get here a post request. So this post request, you can see here, contains the XML, and this is the result of that request. So I'm going to send this request to the repeater. Go to the repeater, and then let's try to generate some error first, because if I say -1, which should not be there. So you can see no such product or store, but this is not XML parser error. We need to see here XML parser error, and how we will do that. So just make it like this, and here let's just put the DTD. So I'm gonna copy this and come back here, put that DTD, fine. And let's try to call here a file which I want to read. So let's say file : / and etc/host file. Let's try to read that file. Click enter, and this time you get the XML parser error, and this error because of this exception, right? So that means the application is parsing XML errors. Now we have to create a scenario in such a way that this error also contains the file contents. So for that, first of all, we need to go to the exploit server, which we will find here. So go to the exploit server, and now I don't need the burp proxy right now. Okay, in the exploit server, go to the body, and here we need to pass this malicious entity DTD. So the first thing, in the first line, it defines a file entity. This is parameter entity because it contains this %sign, and it is actually calling this file etc passwd. Then in the second line, it's again defining one entity which is eval. This is again the parameter entity, and inside this entity there is one more entity, and this entity named as error, and it is calling this file. This file means there is non-existent, or you can say, let's say a. So whether it is a directory or a file, but this file I don't think present on the target machine, so it will throw an error here, file not found error, and then it will going to read this entity, and that entity will present us the file content of etc passwd. Then we call the eval, so that it will read this, and then we will call the error, which will read this. You are thinking, what exactly is that? That should be %sign, right? But if I go to the burp decoder and put that %sign and encode it as HTML, so you can see this is the value which they put here. So to test, I'm going to put here %sign, and let's see what happened. Copy this exploit server, come here, and here we need to put the exploit server URL, and copy this whole line, copy, come back to the burp proxy, go to the repeater, and inside repeater, now instead of calling this file, I'm going to tell the server, go to this URL. Go to this URL, and which is my exploit server. Fine. So let's just send this request, And as you can see, XML parser error is there, and this is the exception. But the problem is the entity name must immediately follow the percentage sign in the parameter entity reference. So the problem here is, if you see closely, there are two percentage sign. Let's go to the exploit server. Yeah, there are two percentage sign. So it's reading this percentage sign, but maybe validating the second one, this second percentage in the first in the same line. So what you need to do here to trick that, we just encode this percentage sign into the HTML. Fine. So let's take this HTML and go back to the exploit server, and instead of percentage, put it. So once it will see this content, but once it interpret this, it will see, okay, this is the percentage sign. Fine. So store this one again and go back to the burp proxy, go to the repeater and just send this request again now. And this time you see the etc passwd file content. So you can see there is file not found exception, and this exception because of this file or directory path, because this directory or this file does not exist on the target machine. Why I am calling it directory? Because it's /aaa, so it can consider it as a file or a directory, whatever. Fine. You can test it in such a way, like, let's see, you just put here /etc, store it again, go back to the burp proxy and send this again. And now as you can see, it's saying that AAA is not present, but once I say /etc, I did not pass the file name, I just passed the directory name, and etc is the directory. So you can see it can read all the files inside the directory, inside the etc directory. Fine. So this AAA could be considered as a directory or as a file, whatever, but if the directory or file, any of these exist on the system, it will give you the content of that. If it is directory, it will give you the listing of the file inside that directory, files and directories, whatever. And if this is a file, so it will call the content of the file. So if I say, let's say hosts store, and if I come back to the burp suite and send this request again, so this time we will get the content of etc/host file, which is this. Fine. So I hope you understand. If you have any query, please put your query in the comment section. I will try to resolve it as soon as possible. And we already solved the lab because we already read the content of etc passwd file. So if I go back, and this is the content of etc passwd file. So that's it for this video. See you in the next video. Bye.